In this section, we will be looking at how to do optimistic updates using React Query. So let us look at what optimistic updates are. As the name indicates, it implies updating the state before performing a mutation under the assumption that nothing can go wrong. It is typically done to give an impression that your app is blazing fast. With that said, you do have to cater to scenarios where the mutation can in fact error out. Managing these optimistic updates is typically not so straightforward, but React Query, on the other hand, does simplify it to a very good extent. So now that we know on a very high level what optimistic updates are, so let us look at how we can apply optimistic updates on our posts RQ component. So to do this, as a first step, we need to comment out everything that we've written on the onSuccess callback. We will not be needing this. We require 3 different callbacks. So the first one is onMutate, and the second one is onError, and the third one is onSettled. Now let us look at the first callback, which is the onMutate callback. This onMutate callback is called before the mutation function is even fired. And this receives the same variables or the payload that the mutation function receives. Okay, so we know that the mutation function is this add post, and this receives the post payload. And this is exactly what this function receives here as well. So let us put something like new post right here. Now, the first thing that we want to do inside of this function is to cancel any outgoing refetches so they do not override our optimistic update. So we can do it by using the query client instance and accessing the cancel queries method inside of it. And we also have to pass in the query key of the query. And in this case, it is going to be posts. Also make sure to use this as an array because that is what we've done here as well. And this operation is typically an asynchronous operation. So you will have to put an await keyword in the front and you will have to put the async keyword here. So when I was going through the docs of useMutate for optimistic updates, this particular operation was a little confusing to me. So let us see in depth why this command is very important. When you perform an optimistic update, you want to prevent any in-flight queries from invalidating your optimistic update. Here's why. First off, we have to prevent race conditions. If there is an ongoing fetch for the posts query and you try to add a new post using the mutate function, there is a chance that the ongoing fetch might complete after your optimistic update, therefore overriding the optimistic data with the stale data from the server. And the second reason is to ensure consistent state. By cancelling the ongoing queries, you ensure that no stale or incomplete data is accidentally applied to the UI after the optimistic update. So this will keep the UI in a consistent state. Alright, let's move on. Next, we need to get a hold of the current query data before we make any updates. This will help us roll back in case the mutation fails. And to get a hold of the current query data, we use the getQueryData method from the query client instance. So we can say const previous post data query client, and we are accessing the getQueryData method, and we also have to pass in the post query key. And finally, as a third operation, we have to update the internal posts cache with this new item that we are receiving right here. So to do that, we can just copy this existing lines that we've written right here. This is what we need. The only difference is that we do not get the new data in this particular format, but instead we get the exact payload that we passed into the mutation function. So what we can do is, we can remove this, open up an object, and then we can spread out the new post right here. In addition to this, we also have to do one more thing. If we go to db.json right here, you can see that each item, along with the title and the body, we also have a unique ID, which we do not have in this new post, right? So let us add an ID here as well. So we can say old query data.data.length +1. And let us also make this ID into a string, because in db.json, every ID is a string right here. So because of this line of code, we have now updated the list of posts even before making the post API request. And finally, from this onMutate function, we are going to return an object with a key value set to previous post data in case the mutation errors out. So let us come down here, open up an object, and we have to pass in the previous post data. And that is it for the onMutate function. Let us move on to the onError callback. So this onError callback is going to get 3 different arguments. So the first one is going to be the error object. But we will not be needing this in this function right now. So let us put an underscore before it. And the second argument is going to be the payload that was passed in here to the mutate function right here. So this is just going to be a post object, which we will also not be using in this callback right now. So I have put an underscore at the beginning. And the third one is going to be the context object. So this context object is going to give us access to the previous post data that we returned from the onMutate callback. So on the event of some error happening, we can reset the cache list with the previous cache data using the setQueryData method like we did before. So let us use the query client instance dot setQueryData, and then the first argument, as we did previously, is going to be the posts array, and the second argument is the context dot previous post data. So the rolling back logic on the event of some error is as simple as that. Let us move on to the last method, which is the onSettled method. This callback is triggered when the mutation is successful or when there is an error. Inside of this method, all that we have to do is fetch all of the posts so that the server data is in sync with the client data. So we can say query client dot invalidate queries, and then as we did previously, we pass in the posts item right here, and that is it. If your application is such that there isn't going to be a lot of concurrent data updates happening in the server, then you don't have to put anything inside of here, but this is just an added precaution, and the user is not going to notice any difference. And we have done everything necessary for optimistic updates. Let's go back to the browser. Let's clear this out. And also let us make sure that it is throttled. All right. So for the post title, we can say something like React query. And for the post body, we can say something like React query is amazing. So let's post it. And now you can see that this showed up even before the post API was completed, right? So we're optimistically updating it with the assumption that nothing will go wrong. And then a refetch is done in the background and the list is synced with the server state. As a practice, try simulating the error condition by changing up the API URL endpoint and show an error message on the screen with the help of the isError boolean that we get from the useMutate hook as we discussed a few sections ago. We have now come to the end of this course of working with React Query. I hope that you're now in a very good position to handle both queries as well as mutations. If you found this content helpful, please do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you in the next video.